pronounced that right, I hope so.
Well done. Are Just Stop Oil latest protests heading their own course?
So let's just remind ourselves, so Just Stop Oil members, and they are a group that basically want to stop new licences and production of fossil fuels in this country. They threw, I think it was tomato soup, at Van Gogh sunflowers. They gluing themselves to roads, targeted luxury car showrooms. I think they put some cream cake or something like that over King Charles's waxwork at Two Swords. Armando.
I'm always very, very nervous about endorsing or even listening to someone advocating even more bans on protests. I mean, what this campaign did, if it transgressed the law, they'll get charged. The laws are in place.
But is it hurting their cause? That's Virginia's question.
Well, if they're smart, they'll soon stop, because I think it's worked because we're all talking about it and they've made their point. If they're smart, they'll move on to some other clever way of making their point. And I would like to cut them some slack, especially younger people, because, you know, the report came out today from the UN saying it's too late. Climate change, we've left it too late. We've got Rishi Sunak deciding not to go to the climate conference in Egypt. You know, and growing up as a teenager or a 20-something, thinking this is what we've passed on to them, it's no wonder they are frustrated, they're angry, they're confused, they're annoyed, they want to do something imaginative and bold. Yes, it's annoying, and I'm sure I'd lose my patience with them if I kept being stopped. But you know, if we have, as we have at the moment, a Home Secretary who decides that everything is political and that you have to then introduce boutique laws specifically designed to ban a particular type of protest, then I think we're on a slippery slope. I mean, look what's happening in Moscow and in Russia. We don't want that. We have laws here. If people transgress them, if people are causing obstruction, then they'll be charged. But the idea that we can't protest, there's a new law saying that we mustn't make noise when we protest. It's a protest. Noise is part of the definition. So I'm very, very reluctant about advocating any further kind of restrictions on how people behave like that.
Julia.
I do think they're harming their cause. I completely disagree with you, Armando. I don't think they do have a just cause. I don't want to just stop oil. I want to keep oil. I want to keep gas and fossil fuels. The reason why we live the lives we do in the West in the 21st century is, thank God, for fossil fuels, which delivered the Industrial Revolution. I would like that Industrial Revolution delivered to everyone around the world, the billions of people who survive on, you know, a couple of dollars a day and are scrabbling around to make a life for themselves and keep their children alive.
So, Julia, when you've got the UN saying, as Armando is referring to, that there's no credible pathway now
it's
to
a complete
reach
load of nonsense. That's not backed up by the latest IPCC.
Okay, well, listen,
it is
I
a load of nonsense.
Maybe you know better than the UN. This is what the UN are saying, and that the current policies may lead to 2.8 degrees warming this century.
Those climate models have been exposed as complete nonsense again and again and again. They are the most extreme end of the scientific models contained in those IPCC reports. But the point is, even if it were true, even if it were, would that necessarily be an issue? But that's aside the point from the kind of protests we're seeing. Because I think the issue here is you've got a lot of very entitled middle-class people who've led a very nice life.
Do we know they're middle-class people?
They pretty much are, actually, yes. I think we do. They want to stop other people living good lives.
Yeah.
If you want
have you been checking them out individually,
if you want to have limits on people's ability to access fuel, you want to make it more expensive to get a plane abroad, to use a car, to heat your home, you are going to be harming poorer people, and you're going to be harming poorer people in the developing world. In my view, these people are not just, well, I think they're tantruming toddlers who've clearly never been told no by their parents. I think it's time we told them no. I think they are deeply, deeply immoral in what they're doing.
It's the developing world that's saying this has got to stop.
The world isn't saying
it's the developing world that's saying we're on fire.
They're really not. The world is not on fire, and the world is not going to die, and we're not going to die. This is catastrophizing stuff that is not actually in the scientific sections of the IPCC reports. It's not.
And there wasn't a pandemic.
No, hang on.
Of course there was a pandemic. Of course there was a pandemic.
Science is all subjective, and it's...
No, science should be objective, which is why we shouldn't have politicised statements about science.
99.9% of the science tells us that the climate is facing an utter catastrophe if it hasn't started already.
It literally doesn't. You should read some of the scientific reports. They don't back up those political statements. They don't.
Very, very sadly, because of this point of view in the Conservative Party.
I'm not in the Conservative Party.
No, but because of the point of view that exists, our Prime Minister announced today that despite us chairing COP, he will not be going to the next COP in Egypt. And that's why these young people are on the street. And can I say, I long for a Labour government, if only for one thing, because we will not be granting new licences for oil and gas.
Great.
Because we're serious.
And we can all be cold. And we can all be cold in the winter.
And look, I remember protesting when I was young against apartheid. I remember protesting against the poll tax. We are a mature democracy defending freedom in Europe. Of course, there must be a right to protest. We don't need any more laws. Absolutely right, the laws exist. I don't personally support stopping ambulances being able to get down the road and you know, cementing yourself to the ground and that sort of thing. But the right to protest must be sacrosanct in a civilised democracy, and we should not let them take it away.
All right, let's a lot of hands up. Oh, woman there in the blue top, yes.
I almost don't want to give credence to what Julia said, because I think a lot of us here do not believe it.
Well, in that case, it must be wrong.
I'm interested to know if you want to live in a world with fossil fuels, the sort of lives that your children and children's
100%.
children are going to lead, if that's the case. I think my question is more, what do the panel think is the best way to, given that Rishi Sunak is not attending COP, given that the UN report said that there's no credible pathway to get below 1.5, how do we incentivise politicians to think long-term and not focus on short-term party political infighting and actually focus on the things that are really, really going to affect our generations?
Okay, woman here in the stripy t-shirt at the front.
I think it's a bit ridiculous to say that like climate change is not as bad as it is, because did we not all experience this summer where we got 40-degree heat? Like, that's unheard of. And also the floods that have been happening in Pakistan, like 30 million people displaced. Like,
30 years ago as well.
Yeah, climate refugees is like, that's in our future. It's really immediate, and I think this summer should have shown everybody that we thought maybe it's going to be in a few 30 years time, 2050, but it's happening right now, and I think we really need to take action.
It's called weather.
Woman. Julia, you know that the consensus of you know that the consensus of scientists, these things are happening more often. I mean, I don't think that is in dispute.
No, actually, the IPCC report
past 5 years, hottest on record, for example.
There is actually not consensus on the idea that actually a lot of these extreme weather events are happening more often.
Okay, I'll leave that with you.
They're not.
Woman here in the stripy top.
They're not. I can send you the data.
Let's listen.
Firstly, I find your denial shocking, and I find your judgment, which is pretty ignorant on people who protest, very insulting, actually, as someone who's protested all my life. And it is a human right that we must not. It's a democratic human right.
Yeah, I support your right to protest.
Great. But your judgment of who I'm definitely working class, and it's quite insulting that you think. Anyway. To get to my point, I'm going to be going to a demonstration on Saturday, the March of the Mummies, and I'm wondering if I'm likely, possibly in anything up to 5 years' time, to get a tag for having gone to the march, because that's apparently on the cards, and scarily
You're talking about
the
the public order bill, which is going through at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, let's ask the person we have here from the government. So Lucy, the question. Let's get back to the original one, which is: are Just Stop Oil's latest protests hurting their own cause? But then also we've heard a lot about legal disincentive to protest at all. And how do we incentivise politicians to think long term when we've got Rishi Sunak, for example, not going to COP27?
So lots of points there. So I think it's absolutely right that people should have a voice. They should be able to express their voice. They should be able to campaign and bring things to the attention of decision makers. As an MP, people are writing to me the whole time with their campaigns and bringing them to my attention. And I think that is part of living in a democracy, and I welcome it. But I do think that when campaigners start to disrupt businesses going about their work, building the economy, when they disrupt people. We've all talked about ambulances and 4-hour waits and our NHS, disrupting ambulances, getting sick people to hospital. stopping people going to school, then I think there's a problem, and I think that we need to act and tackle that. Now, the reason is that the government is absolutely listening to the issue of climate change. It's not just listening, it's acted on it. So we were one of the first major countries to legislate for net zero by 2050.
So why is the Prime Minister not going to COP27?
Well, I'll come on to that. So we have reduced our carbon emissions by 40% since 1990, faster than any other Western country. And so we are acting. So we hear and we're acting on it. To come on to the point about the Prime Minister, I think the UK has been leading in this sphere, not just in COP when we held the presidency, but overall. And in fact, the Prime Minister, when he was Chancellor, led on this issue as well. He brought together financial institutions, and he's committed to the UK being the world's first net zero financial centre. So he is absolutely on this issue.
Why is he not going? Let's just get to that.
He's not going because at the moment we've discussed and highlighted that we've got a fiscal statement on the 17th of November. Obviously he needs to prepare for that so that we have domestic stability. But I can assure you that government ministers across the board at all levels of seniority will be attending COP. As a transport minister, I involved in my portfolio as of 2 days ago was decarbonisation of transport and the future of transport, and I was going to attend COP. And I am sure there will be ministers at every level attending COP, as well as Alok Sharma, our COP president. I don't think the fact that the Prime Minister himself isn't going in any way diminishes our commitment.
But it's the message it sends, because if we were the president, people look to us to set an example. So if he's saying, no, I'm not going because it's not quite high enough in my entry. If Alok Sharma, I think today was told he no longer needs to attend, is allowed to attend cabinet. So that's a diminishing of his role. In the election campaigns they had over the summer, Liz Truss was talking about, banning solar panels in fields. And he was talking about banning wind power out in the sea. I think those positions have now been reversed. But it's the message, the signals these send out, which is that they're sending out confused signals about how high a priority they give to this.
OK, let me move on. I'm going to take one more question, which we've just about got time. We've got 4 or 5 minutes left on the programme. And having you here on the panel, Armando, seemed remiss if we didn't take this question. So